In this video we'll be looking at Reading cycle route R2. This route starts by the Asda in Lower Earley in Reading Borough and follows one of the cycleways there into Reading. From there it heads north to the town centre via the university and the hospital. There is also a branch heading east into Cemetery Junction. Today we'll be starting at the Asda end and following the route north before going back to check out the eastern branch. The route starts on a lovely traffic-free path which is surrounded by trees. It would be great to see a parallel crossing here in future because crossing this road as it is pretty intimidating. On the whole, I really like this stretch of cycleway. It's nice and wide, and it's obvious where pedestrians and cyclists should go, which reduces conflicts. Like many of the other cycleways crossing Lower Earley, it is due for a refurb, though. Tree roots are breaking through, which makes for a pretty bumpy ride, as you can hear. Lower Earley cycleways have many barriers like this. Presumably it's for slowing cyclists down, but sharp turns like this can present a barrier for non-standard bikes, like recumbent bikes and long cargo bikes. This is why they're not really considered a good practice anymore. We think Wokingham should remove as many of these barriers as possible. The signage on this route is pretty good on the whole, but there are a few cases where it could be improved, and case in point, I've just missed a left turn because there's quite a small sign on the left and I didn't see it at all. So here I'm going to do a little U-turn and get back to the route. We're now approaching Shinfield Road. This stretch of the road was supposed to have segregated cycle tracks built on either side as part of Reading's central government funded active travel programme. Unfortunately, the money allocated by the government was not enough to reach this far south. We hope the council can find a way to finish the scheme in the future, as it would be nice to cycle all the way to the university on a segregated cycleway. We now have to turn left onto Cedar Road by mounting the pavement of the crossing. It feels weird, but I don't see how else you're supposed to do it. And yes, there's almost always a car parked right there. This is Northcott Avenue, a lovely and quiet alternative to Shinfield Road. The road was resurfaced a couple of years ago and it's really nice to ride on now. This road does have a problem with occasional speeding, however. Responding to this, the council has recently announced plans to install traffic calming measures on the road. We will make sure to scrutinise their plans when they are consulted on. Now approaching Christchurch Green Junction, which we're going to cross going straight ahead. Again, it's not obvious what you're supposed to do here. Cyclists are permitted to go straight ahead, unlike motorists, but in order to know when to cross, you have to watch traffic from both directions. There is a little box here in the middle of the road marked out for you to wait in, but to get to that box you have to cross into the right turn space for motorists. This junction is really a difficult one, and we're glad to hear that the council are in the process of redesigning it. now on Redlands Road, which was recently graced with traffic calming measures as part of a COVID-era active travel grant. We have a long-running gripe with the council about this scheme. The problem is that some of these little chicane islands permit you to cycle around them, but some of them don't, and it's not clear which of the two you'll encounter until you're very close. We're also not a fan of the speed bumps on this stretch of the road. They're pretty nasty to go over and otherwise encourage you to ride in the middle of the road, which isn't safe. Refuge coming up is a great example of a small treatment which makes cyclists feel safer and more legitimised in making a certain manoeuvre. If someone is turning left from London Road, though, it's not obvious who has priority. Maybe some markings on the road would encourage drivers to give priority. I'm crossing this road the official way, but as you can see on the left here, plenty of cyclists just go straight across London Road when they see that the traffic has stopped. It can save a minute or two. I don't think he's part of the cycle campaign. This is one of the few examples of historical cycling infrastructure in Reading. It looks at least 40 years old, but no matter, it still works. It would be great to see this cycle track resurfaced at some point though. This is the end of the main section of R2. We're now on the canal, so we're just a few minutes away from the centre of town. I'm going to turn around and head back to London Road so I can show you the spur out to Cemetery Junction. There isn't much to say about this stretch, to be honest. It has the same advantages and disadvantages as any shared use path, namely that it's good to be separate from traffic, but bad that pedestrians have to be constantly vigilant to the presence of cyclists. It seems particularly bad that cyclists and pedestrians have to share this small space, considering there are 3 whole lanes right next to it. But in the council's defence, they did draw up plans to remove one of the lanes and build segregated cycle tracks on either side. Hopefully they can find the money and the political will to get that built at some point. Let's review the route and summarise some of the things we'd like the councils to improve. Firstly, we'd like to see a refurbishment of the off-road cycle routes in Lower Earley, like the one I used today, and this would be a job for Wokingham Borough Council. This means a re-evaluation of all the barriers to determine if they're really necessary, and if possible, a resurfacing of the routes. We'd like Reading to come up with a better way of linking Shinfield Road and Cedar Road. The easiest solution is probably to create a short section of shared use path on the west side of Shinfield Road, giving access to Cedar Road. In fact, this was the plan for the Shinfield Road active travel scheme before the construction had to be stopped for budget reasons. It could be implemented with minimal expense. The next one is a big one: the redesigning and rebuilding of Christchurch Junction. As I mentioned earlier, the council is currently in the process of creating a new design for this junction using some money awarded by Active Travel England. We believe the junction is not fit for purpose for either cyclists nor, perhaps more importantly given the proximity to the university, for pedestrians. The crossing that I showed in the video isn't the only difficult one. Many of the other crossings require care and experience for a cyclist to carry out safely, which we believe puts off many potential users. Getting the junction right for all users will be difficult, but on the other hand, there is quite a lot of empty asphalt on the junction, so there's certainly room for a creative solution. We'll be giving our feedback to the council to try and ensure that cyclists are well served. Next is the Redlands Road traffic calming scheme. I already mentioned issues with the speed cushions and traffic calming build-outs. We've actually prepared quite a long list of issues with this scheme and passed it to the council. You can read it in our Spring 2023 newsletter. We've yet to have a response from the council, but we will keep pushing them. And we hope that at the very least they will better consider pedestrians and cyclists in future traffic calming schemes. The final point is on the London Road section from Cemetery Junction heading west. The council presented plans to remove one of the 3 westbound lanes on this stretch and install one-directional cycle tracks on either side. This scheme would serve as a trunk cycleway, link up with a number of existing relatively cycle-friendly roads such as Watlington Street, Redlands Road, London Street and the famous Sidmouth Street. This scheme would be a lot more attractive than the current shared space which I showed in the video, and this is certainly not future-proof considering the council's targets for increased cycling levels. So we would welcome a London Road scheme, but given the long lead times on these complex schemes and the very poor funding environment we have at the moment, we certainly don't expect to see anything concrete for at least 5 years.